Happy New Year, everyone. I wish you all the very best for the next 12 months. Now, it may be 2018, but we've got some unfinished business for 2017, and that really sets the tone for today's topics. Starting off then with this one. As I look at the damage done to some of the Premier League's finest over the festive programme, we'll be wondering who's going to come out of it in one piece. We'll go from club to club, looking at areas that need strengthening in the January window. And we'll also salute the players that put up the best numbers in the last calendar year. Start the new year on too much of a downer, but the Premier League's festive programme is, as Michelle said, taking its toll. With clubs playing 3 games in a week, this is the latest injury table. Yeah, it exists, from physioroom.com, which I suggest you get along to. It actually features some big name players. What they do there is they list the clubs, they list who's got the most recent injury, and as you can see there, Zlatan, just the latest to make it 8 now. They're jointly top of the table with Watford. They've been decimated. Centre halves, Ian Smalling out, wing-back Valencia 2. Don't forget Young's banned. Fellaini struggling to recover in midfield. Now Lukaku and Zlatan suffering a reaction to his knee surgery. Liverpool don't have quite as many injuries that are new, but Mo Salah, of course, was one you saw there just now. Arsenal's frontliners out, including Ozil, Monreal, Giroud, Ramsey. Jesus definitely not available for City's next outing, and De Bruyne listed as a major doubt. Well, that's it. It's back page news, you've got to say, everywhere. And that's reflected all over the papers after that festive fixture pile-up that saw so many people get hurt. So there you are, then have a little look at these. Mourinho crisis after Lukaku horror injury is one of the headlines there. Falling apart, because of course there's a play on words here. It's not just about the injuries, it's about the broader picture at the football club. And then as we carry on, that challenge by punching on De Bruyne and the implications there. Liverpool not immune to it, a player who's been doing so fabulously for them, reflected there in that massive back page there of the Echo. So the games, I'm afraid, for those players and their clubs come thick and fast. More to come. Now, the latest round of matches, which has just kicked off with Brighton against Bournemouth, is, of course, spread out over a few days this week. Now, there's another league game for 18 of the Premier League clubs, whereas a couple of them, Spurs and West Ham, actually have 2 games because they're in action on Tuesday, and then they meet themselves Thursday in a rearranged fixture. That's just the reality, I'm afraid, of Premier League football for these guys. So let's see how the league leaders are affected ahead of their home clash with Watford. Right, OK, let's get some thoughts for the first time in 2018 by Guardian football writer Dominic Fifield, who joins me, I believe, from a house overlooking Selhurst Park, which is a very, very appropriate place for you to be, Dom. A special occasion, I know, for that game between Palace and City. Your son a mascot, I think you told us that the other day. Fabulous story, and what a game to be at. City's winning run ended, and a game full of controversy, not least those injuries.
Yeah, look, it was I've never been to a game like that where we've had so many people carried off. We had 3 on stretchers, and then Gabriel Jesus as well in tears as he hobbled down the touchline at about 20 minutes in. It was proper carnage out there. And I suspect you're right. It reflects where the Premier League is and this madly congested run of games in a very few days. That said, the injuries inflicted to Manchester City players were freakish. They were fouls by Palace players. Scott Dann, who injured himself very badly early on, bringing down Jesus as well, and then obviously the punching on De Bruyne, which was a panic-induced tackle after a missed penalty in stoppage time. You can't condone them, but I think it reflected the mindset. Palace hadn't seen any of the ball at all, pretty much in that second half, and were desperate. And that prompted rather panicked tackles, puncheons being the worst of them. I don't think De Bruyne is seriously injured. I think Gabriel Jesus of the City players is the more seriously injured. He could be out for 1 or 2 months with a knee problem, which actually happened when he hyperextended. No challenge involved. Yeah. Palace's injuries were actually more serious. I think Scott Dann could be out for 4 or 5 months.
Just a quick word on the penalty, because it wasn't a case of just ending City's winning run. They could have been beaten, couldn't they?
Look, I think Palace supporters are used now to missing last-minute penalties. It's the second time this season, and it will come back to haunt them at some stage. That's almost an inevitability. But yes, you're right. Palace had hardly any chances in that second half, and yet inevitably Wilfried Zaha gets 1 moment to run at Raheem Sterling. There's a clumsy tangle of legs. He goes down, the penalty's awarded, and Luka Milivojevic, who's actually been fantastic from the penalty spot since coming to English football, chose that moment to come to the worst penalty of his life. But that's the drama of being a Crystal Palace supporter. And also, I think it could end up being Manchester City's sort of Van Nistelrooy against the bar moment from the Invincibles back in 03-04 rather.
All right, just another thing coming off the back of those injuries then, that Jesus one, Dom, in particular, does that make Alexis Sanchez to City suddenly make a bit more sense? I know some of the newspapers think so, send for Sanchez as if, he is the answer. What timing this is. And I also wonder whether it might be the best thing for the Arsenal dressing room if they actually get the Chilean out of the club right now. Is it a done deal despite what Wenger and Pep have been saying? Dom, it seems to make sense. I mean, if Jesus does miss up to, say, 2 months, yeah, he's not an out-and-out striker, Sanchez, but he would fit, wouldn't he?
He'd be perfect. And you know what? I would be very surprised if Alexis Sanchez's representatives aren't on the phone as we speak now to Manchester City saying, I think your time's come, you've got to come back and revive this deal that almost went through in the summer. There's a problem in that Arsenal dressing room between some of the players and Alexis Sanchez. That was evident after the Burnley result last month. And it was sort of indicated at Selhurst Park last Thursday as well, when he celebrated his first goal with 4 players, and the rest of the team went off and celebrated with each other on the halfway line, well away from him, and he was put out by that. There is an opportunity there for City to do that deal. I think Arsenal would be realistic this time round and accept £40-50 million for a player who'll be able to leave for nothing in a few months' time. There's a lot of sense to that deal happening now.
Yeah, the goal against West Brom was celebrated by more players, but it looked like they were just a bit of cosmetic window dressing. Maybe they're an illusion of it all being okay. But let's look at another dressing room, one that is said to be less than united, if you will. The critics have been getting stuck into Jose Mourinho's side. Former gunner, Martin Keown, no great surprise there, says Jose is losing the respect of the players. Wow, okay. If you didn't expect that, I'd be surprised. But ex-Red Paul Scholes saying this. Well, he got stuck into Paul Pogba, saying that he looks unfit. He's blaming Jose Mourinho, saying Pogba doesn't look fit, and I wonder whether he's training properly. Wow, remarkable stuff there. He said he's strolling, that he's not the player you saw playing for Juventus. Wherever you look, there's negativity around Manchester United right now. People appear to be turning on him, whether it is Keown saying that he thinks that the dressing room and those players there have turned, whether it's the media, whether it's former players turning. It's extraordinary this, Tom, isn't it? Because it's just building and building, and at the same time that it builds, United's results suffer, don't they?
It's staggering how quickly this is all unravelling, really, because you only have to go back 6 weeks, 2 months, and United were considered to be the main challengers to Manchester City, the team that stood a chance of hauling them in. I think what we've seen is a team that's cracked under the pressure that's been exerted by City winning every week. Direct rivals, obviously, but also more personally with Jose Mourinho. He got that job at Manchester United because he sold himself to the United board saying he could stop Pep Guardiola. He can't. The reality is that Guardiola has instilled a philosophy that is sweeping all before them in the Premier League, albeit they dropped a couple of points yesterday. And United cannot compete with that at the moment. We saw it all last week with this. We need more than £300 million to spend on new players. Well, I'm sorry, that's ludicrous. This is Manchester United. They should be more organised than this. They should have a better strategy than this. And I think we're just seeing now a team that's frayed around the edges and now cracking in its core.
All right, we'll talk about transfer spending when we come back in a moment, Tom. Let me just quickly update you on a score, because we've actually got Premier League action going on right now. Brighton have the lead against Bournemouth in today's early game there. Anthony Knockaert has scored the first goal. OK, so already on New Year's Day, we've looked at how injuries are beginning to affect Premier League clubs who are feeling the effects of the festive programme. If only there was a way to replace injured players. Oh, hang on a minute. Look at the calendar. It's January the 1st, 2018, and the transfer window is conveniently open. So brace yourself now for the JD Show guide to who needs what. And we, of course, welcome your thoughts. But first, an opening salvo of silliness from the press, or at least certain parts of the press. Yeah, we've been told that United have been put Ron alert. Ronaldo available to go back? Or how about this? Jose leans on Pogba to get hold of Dybala. There you go, it's silly season. That's maybe not so silly. I'll discuss that one in a moment. Walcott ready to rejoin the Saints. So here we are then. You're going to be seeing and reading and hearing an awful lot about transfers right now. OK, Let's see if any of those come to pass. Now, you might have guessed this already from watching this show, but I don't really like transfer windows very much because I get sick and tired of people constantly sharing speculation that very often has little or no basis in fact. So rather than commentating on potential moves that might have been planted by agents or simply made up, let's instead assess clubs and suggest what they may need and then see where we go with it. So here goes. I'll split this into the top and the bottom halves of the table, and Dom will be involved again in just a moment. So right at the top, Manchester City. We spoke already about Alexis Sanchez and how he actually looks like a player that City could do with, given their injuries right now. Stones and company's various injuries reminded us well that Pep is still short, I think, of one quality centre-half. So that's City. Chelsea in second, remember. This could be spectacular. Either a massive bid for a huge name, Mertens, Griezmann or someone like that, or a massive meltdown by Antonio Conte if he doesn't get anyone to compete with Michy Batshuayi as the backup striker for Morata. On to Manchester United now. Where to start? There could be a purge, or there could be absolutely nothing happening. At some stage, Jose, we know, will offload players, and lots of them, but it might happen in the summer, most likely. The squad looks strong. Whenever you look at it on paper, it looks strong. So why the poor recent showings? United will be linked with big names, but I don't know if a really big name is going to come in January. Liverpool. Now, if Van Dijk, who's already there and wearing the kit, were joined by Stefan de Vries, and a world-class goalkeeper came in, wow, well, Liverpool would be a club transformed just like that. But there'd also be, I think, for the worse if Coutinho left. So this is a huge window, whichever way you look at it, for them. Arsenal now, they're in a peculiar situation of their own making, really. If Sanchez and or Ozil leave, then the priority becomes replacing them with a world-class creative player like Riyad Mahrez. But what they actually really need, I think, is a commanding midfielder. Now that Coquelin has stopped doing his stopgap job, they're short in there, hence the speculation about Steven Nzonzi, formerly, of course, a Premier League player himself. Tottenham now. Son Heung-min really should be trusted to cover for Kane whenever needed. Remember, he's been a bit unwell recently too. The focus has now switched to midfield. Ross Barkley appeals to some Spurs fans who think maybe he could become a successor to Dembele or someone in a central midfield role. Burnley now, and so much has gone right for them this season. It's very hard to find holes in Sean Dyche's side, but Robbie Brady's recent injury left them a little short of creativity. Recent games demonstrated that, so maybe a bit of magic needed for them. On we go to Leicester City right now. The central defence, I think, could use a bit of cover, and aren't we supposed to be seeing midfielder Adrien Silva at some stage? Yeah, okay, that was a question of timing. Right, Big Sam at Everton now. Leighton Baines looks like he is physically coming to the end of his career. His fitness just isn't holding up. Cover them for Cuco Martina. Himself a makeshift left back is required. And despite the rally under Big Sam, they still look short of a centre forward. Okay, talking about centre forwards, on we go to Watford right now. And what I think they need is a striker to make up for Deeney and Gray's apparent shortcomings this season. Right, that's got us from 1 down to 10. Dom Fifield's been patiently listening to me there. Dom, your thoughts on that? During the break, actually, we were talking a bit about Barkley and Spurs, and you might have a bit of a downer for Spurs fans.
Well, look, it could still happen, but I got the impression that Chelsea might be more confident of putting that deal off now. Remember, Barkley was very close to joining Chelsea back in August, but then opted to stay on Merseyside to have treatment on a hamstring problem, which was actually quite serious. He still hasn't featured this season. Yeah. So I think Chelsea will revive that deal, or will certainly attempt to get that and push that one through. Chelsea are the key to me. I mean, I think Alexandro at Juventus might now be available. They may have to fight off competition from the Manchester clubs for him. But I think if Chelsea want to make a splash, then Sandro, Thomas Lemar at Monaco is worth having a look at, and Ross Barkley. And that's a lot of money. That could be an outlay, probably in excess of £150 million.
Wow, and given where we've started with Van Dijk, what a window we could have coming our way. Right, I'll just run through the next 10, Dom. Here we go. Huddersfield. Quite frankly, I think they've overperformed to such an extent that I wouldn't worry at all about trusting anyone in the squad that they have at their disposal already. So I'm not going to be drawn on them. But I do have a few thoughts about Brighton. And despite that early season form from Tom Mohamed and Glenn Murray's occasional flurry, they really need someone who can consistently convert Pascal Gross's superb delivery into goals. There was amazing talk about Moussa Dembele from Celtic, who could be the one there. Right, let's get on to Southampton. Now, like many clubs, they're crying out for a striker. Maybe they want one more mobile than Austin, more consistent than Gabby Adini. They've got the money, we know that. So, will it be Theo Walcott? Does he satisfy those requirements that I just listed? That's some story, that. Staying on the south coast, Bournemouth now. If the funds are available, well, why not? A high-class central midfielder, preferably one with a goal in him. But I don't know if I expect too much to happen there. Let's wait and see. Stoke, who've had their problems recently. The defence may have creaked massively, but I think central midfield is their biggest problem area. Quite simply, they need legs and energy in there. On now to Newcastle United. Now, a striker is a must, but the financial uncertainty at that club means that even the most obvious of targets might not arrive for Rafa. And that in itself is a headline. On to Crystal Palace. 16 Premier League goals this season. Only one of them scored by an out-and-out striker. Benteke alone is not enough. Roy, we know, can keep a clean sheet against the very best. We've just seen that. But some more firepower maybe wouldn't go amiss. Don will have thoughts on that in a moment. West Ham, if they get smart, they need to fully replace Dimitri Payet, who they haven't done so. So someone creative either out wide or a number 10 would be top of my list. Also, a bit of cover in central defence. Right, West Brom, their football has been so dire at times that the biggest problem they face is actually persuading a striker, who they need, to go to the Hawthorns. Would a really big-name goalscorer go there? They certainly could do with it. Swansea now, and I've heard Danny Ings' name being linked with the Swans. Provided he's recovered fully, it would actually make sense, because Swansea need both a goal scorer and a creator. But they may have only the funds to get one of them, so that could work. Dom, I mentioned you in the context of Palace. I took a liberty there. What do you reckon?
Striker, definitely, a central midfielder and a goalkeeper for Palace. You mentioned Danny Ings there. I think 3 clubs will definitely go for him. Swansea, West Bromwich Albion and Stoke City, all very interested in bringing him in. You mentioned Southampton earlier and the Walcott and Sturridge links as well. Daniel Sturridge is an interesting one, because if Liverpool are prepared to let Ings go, they may well be prepared to let Sturridge go as well. And he needs to revive his career if he wants to go to the World Cup. I think what you see in the bottom of the table are imbalanced squads. That's why those teams are down there. So they'll all have particular areas, as you've highlighted, they need to try and fill in this window. A lot of them are up front.
And that will give us plenty to talk about, and you plenty of work to do once you get back to work. Have a great month. Have a great 2018. Tom, thank you. So, having looked forward to business that could be done this month, let's look back now at 2017 one last time by celebrating the best of the best over the last 12 months in a special edition of the Numbers Game. 2017, the year in numbers. Right, let's start with sheer persistence, and that comes in the evergreen shape of Watford's Brazilian keeper Aurelio Gomes, who played 1 game more than anybody else. That was 41. Right, the most goals scored, Harry Kane leading the way with 39. No surprise there, no prize for guessing he got it, but for him to get 14 more than his closest rival, that is a wow factor. De Bruyne had the most assists with 18 to Eriksen's 15. And the Premier League really does boast some real creative quality these days. No one better, though, than City's KDB. Right, Wilfred Ndidi leading the tackles with 155. And while the dirty work in midfield can't be overlooked either, it's a measure of his worth that he got through more tackles than N'Golo Kante in that category. Most interceptions in the year, Oriol Romeo of Southampton with 87. Now, the lesser midfield honours, I suppose, go to him for that. And also in terms of passing from midfield, Granit Xhaka, who had 3,124. He's like a Swiss metronome. He just gets the ball a lot and he gives the ball a lot. An interesting one for me always is passing accuracy, and it won't surprise you that it's John Stones there, 95.16%. He really does pass the ball well, and I suppose you'd say he's Pep Guardiola's idea of perfection in a centre-half. Staying with City, another of their players touches in the opposition box now, Raheem Sterling, 252. That was more than Sané and Sanchez. He's involved in almost everything that they do. Right, we'll turn our attention to the goalkeepers now, and critically, clean sheets. Without David De Gea's contribution, 19 of them, and the next best was 16. United would have fared even worse last season in the league. Most saves now, 141 from Lucas Fabianski. That's 8 more than Kasper Schmeichel. It says an awful lot about Swansea that they could let in as many goals as they did, but still boast the keeper who made the most saves in 2017. And lastly, best save percentage here. It's Nick Pope with 82.43. He has grabbed his chance after the injury to Heaton with both hands and not dropped it. Credit to him for seeing off some quality opposition in that category, and my thanks as ever to Opta for supplying the data. All right, thank you very much.
Don't forget to click subscribe.